All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Best Self Blueprint. As you all know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences as to what it takes to truly move that dial towards becoming the best version of yourself. So, this next guest is a fellow podcast host, and her story is amazing. By age 18, she had visited all 50 US states and has now been to 43 countries. She spent 6 months touring as a speaker for Thirst Project, a nonprofit spreading awareness of the global water crisis, where she spoke to over 9,000 students at 65 venues, as well as 2 live TV interviews. She won the top 10 under 10 Young Alumni Award from High Point University, where she got her undergrad in international business and Chinese. And on top of all this, she helps an orphanage community in the Philippines. Her devotion to making this world a better place and having seen so much of it is going to lead to a great conversation. So let me introduce Charlotte Thompson, aka Charlotte from Chicago. How you doing?
Hello, I'm so happy to be here, and truly you're making me blush, but I am so excited to be here and just to get to chat a little bit and share some fun stories along the way.
Yeah, so just out of sheer curiosity, I wasn't planning on starting this way, but based on our talk before we hit record, what is like one of the craziest experiences you had while traveling?
Okay. So that's a hard one because there's so many different avenues. I would say one of the most notable ones that people like, you know how there's always that story of yourself that your friends tell someone else to be like, "Oh, they're the XYZ." I met one of my friend's friends, and she came up to me and said, "Oh, you're the girl who met Soldier Boy under the Eiffel Tower." And I was like, is that my defining story? But yes, I studied abroad in Paris, and one day it was beautiful out, and I said, I'm going to go study for my exams in the lawn in front of the Eiffel Tower. And as I was walking to the metro to go home, I accidentally walked into a music video, and it was Soldier Boy filming a video under the Eiffel Tower.
And you just like strolled right through it?
Uh-huh. Like in his music video online, you can see me standing in the corner, like with my phone like this, just recording, not knowing who it was. And the only reason that I figured out who it was, because sorry, I don't really recognize Soldier Boy, he had a giant medallion on that said Soldier Boy. And I'm like, there's no way. And I walked up, and his manager looked at me, didn't think I spoke English, and said, "Do you want a picture?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he goes, "Oh, you're American." And I said, "Yeah, I'm from Chicago." And he goes, "Hey, yo, soldier, we got to go from Chi-Town over here." And that was that. So we have some great photos under the Eiffel Tower, and that's one of my favorite stories to look back on and be like, what just happened?
That is awesome. And so it's things like that because, like you said, you're like, oh, well, there's so many experiences, especially you've done a crazy amount of traveling. Why is it, and I think it's pretty common sense, but specifically to you, why is it so important for you to continue to see new places and immerse yourself in new cultures?
So I think there's a couple different reasons behind that. One, my degree in college was international business. So the more that I was traveling, the more I was furthering my education and seeing how other countries do things, how we do things better, how they do things better. Because so often the American mindset is like, oh, we're the best, we do everything perfect. And that's so far off. The one thing that really bothers me that Europe does so well, they bring the credit card reader to the table. Why doesn't America do that? Why do they take our cards back? So there's those little things that you pick up from traveling. But also, from all of my travels, I've learned that it's not the places you go, but it's the people you get to explore with. And so for me, a lot of my travel has been solo, which has opened up the opportunity to meet new people along the way. And I have met some of my best friends in the entire world while traveling or just sparking up conversations. So it's a very important part of my life of just getting to meet people that you wouldn't meet on your normal everyday commute kind of thing. And traveling is the best way that opens that up. And you just get to learn so many different things about people, their cultures, and love some good foreign cuisine.
I like it. But the thing that amazes me about you is like most people have kind of that one thing that they really like go all in on. But it sounds like you've gone all in on everything you've done throughout your entire life. So what is that like driving force for you behind that? Like what is it that gets you to, you know, tour and speak to 9,000 kids at 65 venues? What is it that gets you to connect with an orphanage in the Philippines? Like what's your driving force behind all that?
So, definitely the biggest factor with me is my faith, and my faith has driven a lot of my decisions because ultimately I feel that's what I've been called to do. I feel like with the crazy thing with the orphanage in the Philippines was that I was supposed to have a friend go with me. She was the one that said, "Hey, I'm going to the Philippines this summer. I'm going to volunteer at an orphanage." And I said, "That sounds so fun." And she said, "Would you like to come?" And I said, "You know what? I just had an internship fall through. I'm not doing anything else. So, sure." I did all the fundraising on my own. And then she got injured and was not able to fly. And I'm thinking, well, I've never been to the Philippines. I've only been to Asia once, like with a group. I was 19 years old. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I still feel called to do this. So I was really scared. I got on that flight. I went, spent a month over there, and absolutely just fell in love with it. And so for me, I think the inner calling of things is what has pushed me to go do the most that I can. And a line that I really love from one of my favorite pastors is that God doesn't increase our God doesn't bless us so that we can increase our standard of living. He blesses us so we can increase our standard of giving. And I'm 24 years old, finished college. I'm not like rolling in the dough or anything. So for me, the biggest way, like the most valuable thing in my life right now is my time. So if I can't throw a lot of money on organizations and things that I care about, I can invest my time, and that's my most valuable resource. So for me, spending time with people that I care about, working towards causes that I care about, and things of that nature, that mixed with what I feel I'm called to do is really what drives me.
We're pretty similar in that aspect. So I phrase it a little differently, but the way I see it is while you're on this planet, while you're living this life, I don't think necessarily everyone is called to do this, but I definitely am, where I feel the responsibility to add as much utility to myself so that that way I can add so that much more value and just contribute more to as many people as I can. And so I'm very happy to hear you say that. And I think you said it really, really eloquently as well. When did you first adopt that mindset? Not only that, like, you're called to be here and just generate as much as you can for others, but actually, like, when did you start actually pursuing that and like really going all in on it?
So I think there's a couple different milestones that have kind of added to that. Um, I would say one, getting a little deep early here, is that when I was 10 years old, I lost my mom to cancer. And I'm an only child, and it was very shaking because she was like my best friend. So for me, I had a complete like life switch as a 10-year-old of, okay, well, now how do I go on without her and just pick up the pieces and figure things out? And it was newly after my mom had passed that I became a Christian, and I still didn't really know much about faith, but that's when I started getting little inklings of like, okay, your life is a little bit different. Like, you just got to make it work. And I would say then once I went off to college and I was really on my own, that's when my mindset was like, okay, well, I have this freedom. And when you're in high school and stuff, everyone kind of is going through the same things. Like, you have to go to school, you have to do this. But as soon as you're 18, there's much more freedom and opportunities to be like, okay, well, go do whatever you want. Like, go do what you're excited about. So I studied abroad every year in college, either a 2-week international language immersion program, a full semester abroad. And some of my friends are like, what are you doing? Just like chill out. And I said, no, this is what I kind of feel called to do. And it was going into my junior year of college. that I was supposed to be doing an internship in Thailand. And that fell through. And it fell through in not like a casual way, but it fell through in like a big slap in the face way. And as a like 19, 20-year-old, I'm sitting here thinking, what is going on? And it was right around the time of the 10-year anniversary of my mom's passing. So I was going through all these emotions, and that's kind of when a light came on that it wasn't like, why me? Why is this happening to me? But what am I supposed to learn from these experiences? And that's what completely changed my mindset, was instead of thinking of these bad situations and saying, oh, well, like, why did this happen to me? What am I supposed to learn from this? And for me, what I was supposed to learn from it was, how am I able to take these tragedies and hard situations and use them to help others around me? And that is really what sparked the last about 4 years of just full go, to say the least.
That's amazing that you have that perspective on it. I mean, it's one of those things I've found. It seems like the people who are the most high performing and high achieving are people who have gone through the most intense adversity with the right perspective, because that's really a make or break moment. And you've had 3 of them at least, who knows how many more, but it really is one of those things where I think more often than not that breaks people. But I think that goes to show everything that you've been able to accomplish. I mean, just looking at this sheet, it's crazy. But I usually wait till the end to do this, but seriously, I want to acknowledge you just for having that tenacity to actually go after that stuff, because I think right now, and I just had a conversation with a guy that I went to school with. Another episode just got released today if anyone wants to go check it out, but we were talking about there's such a disconnect for most people on, I want to go do this thing, I feel called to go do this thing, and then that's where it ends. They don't actually go do the thing. What advice do you have for people in that position who they do feel that calling, that almost like that gut feeling that just is like drawing them towards something, but they're hesitating, they're not pulling the trigger?
I I was in this position, and so there's something that really stood out to me. And as I kind of shared with you before we started this, that I have a mentor named Bob Goff, and he is one of the coolest people on the face of the planet. He's written a couple of books, and they're New York Times bestseller, been all around the world. And one story in particular in one of his books completely like turned the lights on with me, and I just sat there and was like, oh my gosh. And part of it is me being a very big aviation geek, because he has his pilot's license. And so the title of his story was called Land the Plane. And what it was that he was flying one day and he was getting ready to land. And you go through the checklist of like getting your landing gear down, all this, and he needed 4 green lights. And that day, only 3 came on. And he's like, oh no, yeah, that's not good. So he called the radio tower, or the tower, and was like, hi, can you see if my front landing gear is down? They said, okay, fly close by. The visibility wasn't great, so they could not see. He flew like 2-3 times, and they're kind of like, well, I don't really know what to tell you, but we can't see it. And he's thinking, well, eventually I have to land the plane. Like, I have to. So he set up for the landing with only 3 green lights, and he just waited until the last second before he would touch down to see if his actual front landing gear was down or not. And like, he went to land and he touched and his landing gear was down. What was wrong was a 75-cent light bulb that had burned out.
Wow.
And so sometimes in life, we have those green lights, or we're waiting for all the green lights, where it's just a 75-cent light bulb that's burned out. Like, that is what's keeping us from landing the plane on our dreams. And I have chills as I'm like telling this story. It's not even my story to tell, but it excites me so much, because you're never going to get all the green lights, or you're always going to wait for that next thing. But sometimes you just got to land the frickin' plane. You just got to do it, take that step out. And once I adopted that mindset, it's like, okay, we're going to make it happen.
Wow, that is an awesome story. I've never heard it explained like that. And I've asked that question to many people many times. That was so, wow. I'm just thinking about the comparison to that because it's so true where people often, I think, blow way out of proportion the negative possibilities of the outcome of you trying to pursue this dream of yours. But really, if you look at it with, an objective lens, those negatives are really not that bad. And the positives that can come out of it are so much greater than the negatives oftentimes. And so I love that, where sometimes you may not know all the variables. You may know you're taking a leap of faith, but that's why it's called a leap of faith. And the people who live, in my opinion, the most fulfilling lives are the people who land the freaking plane. So I absolutely love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like, because I'm such a visual person, so those kind of stories really help nail it in for me. And another thing that I heard from someone, I want to say it was from Casey Neistat, but it's the vine method of life. And thinking back to Tarzan, the little Disney movie we all watched as a kid, you don't just take one single vine to get from point A to point B. You hop from one vine and you go this way, and then you take another one and go this way. And it may be a little bit to the side, but it's getting you one step closer to your final destination. And so sometimes you just have to take that leap, that vine, and okay, it may have brought you at like a 20-degree angle from where you wanted to go, but it still got you way farther than where you were. And so you just take then the next step, and it might bring you 45 degrees the next way, but that's still getting you closer to your end goal. So you have to drop the idea that every step has to be perfect, and you just have to do it.
And here's my thing to that too. Like, if every step was exactly how you expected it to be, the journey wouldn't even be exciting. There would be no thrill to it because you know exactly what to expect. It's in that, you know, deviation. It's in that pulling off to the side and like getting jerked back and forth a little bit and taking the road you didn't even know was there when you started the journey. That's what makes it exciting. Like, there was a long time from me starting my business to before launching the podcast that I never even had the thought of doing a podcast. And it's been one of the greatest things I've ever done, just getting to meet these amazing people and do these amazing things. But if every step of the process would have gone exactly how I had planned it and visualized it, this never would have happened. And so I love that idea of, yeah, you're going to veer off. You're never going to have a linear path from like the creation of the idea of your goal to the completion of your goal. But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said about the people that you meet along the way with it is just the best part of it. So one of my best friends on the entire planet is from Scotland, and we were both living in Paris at the same time. And it was a weekend trip to Belgium that my university and like a group of young people had put together. And it was mostly for internationals that were living in Paris to go meet people. And my friend Kirsten, her friend that she was supposed to go on that trip with, got sick and couldn't go. And Kirsten was like, well, do I go on this trip by myself? Like, what do I do? And it would have been one of the like first times she was really traveling by herself, especially from in France. And she's like, I don't know. She decided to go, and I was with three of my friends with my GoPro in hand, and just this precious little Scottish girl walks up and goes, what's that, and points at my GoPro. And I was like, hello, it's a camera. Now the rest is history. She's one of my best friends on the entire planet. I spent Christmas with her in Berlin, Germany in 2019. And it's all because she was like, well, I'm going to just go, even though this was not the plan. And you meet people along the way that completely change your life. And it makes it all worth the fact of like, well, I would have had a great weekend with just like my gal pal. But now, because of that veer off, I have a whole new friend. So it's just the people that you get to meet along the speed bumps and the detours that really make life exciting.
And I'll say this too, and I've said this before, but I'm just going to keep touching on it because it's that important. When you shoot that shot, when you take that chance, when you go to that new place, God, the universe, karma, whatever you want to call it, rewards you by putting those people in your path and has you intersect with them when you take that chance, in my opinion, as a reward for you going out and taking that chance, because those are some of the coolest experiences you'll ever have when you go out and do something that you know is out of the norm for you, or it was that leap of faith. And then you end up meeting someone who turns out to be your best friend, or you just have one really meaningful conversation with a stranger that then alters the way you view the world a little bit or betters your perception. And in my opinion, that's your reward, or one of the many rewards for going and taking that leap of faith.
Definitely. And I think it's important to note that sometimes so I'm a big advocate for shooting your shot. That was one of my first podcast episodes, was shooting your shot. But I've talked about that I like to shoot my shot a lot, but sometimes you don't make the shot. Sometimes it's not only do you airball, but like that shot was so bad, I hit the marching band behind the basket. It was that bad. And I think it's really important to acknowledge those stories too, because everyone likes to talk about, oh, like I shot my shot and it went so well. Or I'm like, I shot my shot and really embarrassed the heck out of myself. But it gave me the confidence to be like, well, that was horrible. But if I can make it through that, I can make it through the next one. And that's the important part because, yeah, I've shot my shot and really embarrassed myself. But if I hadn't had the confidence to then do it the next time, I wouldn't have met XYZ. And it's, it happens. And I'm a big extrovert and I have a lot of friends that are introverts. They're like, Charlotte, I could never do what you do. I'm like, okay, well, you don't need to do what I do. You just need to step out of your comfort zone because your comfort zone is not my comfort zone. Like, I can walk up to anyone and spark up a conversation. I have met a lot of celebrities across my days, and the way that I will just shamelessly just be like, "Hi, I'm Charlotte. We're going to be friends," kind of mentality. My friends are like, "I could never do that." I said, "Well, just do something that pushes yourself a little bit. Go reach out to someone in your DMs. Like go send an email to someone that you don't feel like you're qualified to work with. Just do a little thing to push yourself and don't base it off of my comfort zone, base it off of yours."
That's so huge. If anyone got to this point and zoned out for the past 3 minutes, rewind it and listen to that again, because it's something every single person should take away. Like the people who shoot their shot and make it and like get put on, I would argue oftentimes like a pedestal almost by others for making that shot. I'm willing to bet if you go look back at their history, they've missed more shots than most people have even taken in order to make that big game shot or whatever you want to call it. But it's the ability to put it in perspective of, like you said, like, yeah, I missed that shot, but even if it was that bad, like if I missed that bad and drilled the drummer boy in the head with the basketball, like now maybe I learned something. Maybe now I've built up that mental callousing, that mental toughness to go into the next one a little better. And just rolling with the punches, understanding, like, if people saw how many individuals I've reached out to have on the podcast that have either just not responded or responded not by saying yes, we'll put it that way. Like it would be really easy to get persuaded to stop, but the benefits so far outweigh the cost of missing a shot every now and then, which it's probably more oftentimes you'll miss shots than make them, but the more you take shots, the higher your percentage gets.
Absolutely. And some of the missed shots, like you can laugh at later, like it might take you a little bit to get out of the situation because I am someone who I'm very single. I'm very much like catch flights, not feelings, but I'm also not afraid to like shoot my shot and say that I'm interested in a guy or what so have you. I once gave a business card to a guy as I was like, look at how like professional I am. I'm giving this guy my card. They were new cards. Took me 3 days to realize that the last digit was printed wrong. So
Ooh.
I gave my number to a guy that was the wrong number. So I literally went back to the place of work where we met to be like, oh my gosh, is this man here? Like I have to fix it. He wasn't there. It was awkward. So I literally texted my number neighbor. I texted the person with that number that was printed on my business card and was like, yo, did you like get a text from someone that like thought you were someone else? And tried to explain the situation. Of course, got left on red. I was like, okay. So it was so cringy and so terrible. I'm like, you know what? I can never go back and shop at this store again, ever, never. But now I can look back on it and laugh and say, you know what? It's okay, probably for the best, but at least I had the confidence to go do it. And it gives all of my friends a very good chuckle thinking that I texted my number neighbor. I was this committed to trying to fix this. To know that he very well may have never texted me in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And like the coolest part about it is no matter how royally you mess up or just how weird the situation gets, that's another awesome story to tell at a party. Like, I'm just going to leave it at that. No matter how well or how poorly it goes, it's another experience in the arsenal.
Yeah, and you have to learn to laugh at yourself. That's the biggest thing that I've learned, and from me talking with people that have many, many years on me, one of the biggest pieces of advice they always give is learn to laugh at yourself. Like don't take yourself too seriously and laugh at the mistakes, and it takes away the pain and the power that it holds over you by laughing about it and being able to share that story and feel like, "LOL, remember when that happened?" And it just I'm the first person to laugh at myself if I do something stupid, and I love it.
So, one thing I want to take out of that, and it was a pretty quick statement, but I want everyone to think about this. The people with the best perspective on life are people who are older and nearing the end of their life, people in their 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah, it's unfortunate to think about, but at the same time, like they will give you pieces of advice that you will not find anywhere else because they're to the point where they're going to be very real and raw, but also they've had an entire lifetime of experiences and they've seen most things there are to see. I was really fortunate in high school. I had a job at a retirement home, and I have no shame in asking people questions. Probably a good thing for having a podcast. So I would ask them. I would say, "Hey, like now that you're here, like what advice do you have for people who are in their teens?" And they would give me their little tips and tricks and philosophies, and it is invaluable. The $8 an hour I got paid at the job was nothing compared to the advice that I was given from those people. So I mean, if it's a grandparent, if it's a friendly neighbor, like whoever, some person you see at the grocery store, like just ask because they will give you some advice that you'll carry with you for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. I have friends. I joke around because I'm the person that can make friends with anyone. I have friends that are 16, I have friends that are 65, and I hang out with them like it's the same. And from similar to your story, my second job. My first job was at Michael's Craft Store as a cashier, but my second job, I worked at a health club, a pretty like high end health club, and a lot of like Bears players and Bulls players worked out there, and I just connected with a lot of people. And there was one member there who was the sweetest guy on the face of the planet, absolutely adored. He has 3 kids. Two are like a little bit older than me. One is a little bit younger, so like I'm the age of his children, and we connected really well. And so I moved out to New York after graduation. We stayed in touch over like email and text every once in a while. And his eldest daughter lives in New York. And so he was coming out to visit her. And he said, well, she's flying back from London the day after I fly in. So I have some time. Do you want to go get dinner? I was like, heck yeah, I do. So we got dinner in New York. This dinner lasted 4 hours. This is like a man that is like my father's age, that I'm like, dude, you are my friend. I love all that you have to say. I love spending time with you. And just getting to pick his brain and chat with him about life and stuff. It's so cool. And it's not weird. People are people. I think that age is just a number. So to be able to say that you have friends that are in every generation, you learn something different from each one. And I it's just something that brings me a lot of joy.
No, I completely agree with that. I think it's so important to have you all of your friends should not be from the same area, the same age, with the same perspectives on everything. Like you need diversity. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in a box. You need those varying perspectives, which means hang out with, like you said, hang out with people who are 16 or 17, hang out with people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s plus, hang out with people who have very different opinions than you do. Like have those conversations not to be an instigator, but to actually learn and open up and come into it with just curiosity, I think is so invaluable.
Yeah, and one thing that you and I were talking about was our passions and things that really excite you. And it's so cool because when you talk to someone about something that they're passionate about and you can see that fire light up within them, oh my gosh, it's the best thing. And for me, being a real like aviation geek, I have this app on my phone where you can tell like and you can see any plane in the sky and you can click on it and see all the info on it. And for me, I will literally just be like standing around and I have such selective hearing. I'll hear when a plane's flying over and I'll point it out to my friends and be like, guys, guess where it's going? And at first my friends were like, Charlotte, what are you doing? What do you mean? Where do you think that plane's going? It's 37,000 feet in the sky. And now the people around me have learned to point out planes to be like, Charlotte, where's that one going? Or they'll send me Snapchats of a plane just flying nearby them and be like, I wonder where it's going. And so when you show your passions to people, people respond well to that because they see the genuine nature behind it. And when you have that mentality that you genuinely want to be interested in someone else's passion, even if it's not something that personally excites you, but you show interest that you're like, well, this is important to you. I want to learn about it because it's important to you and I care about you. Then that goes so much farther than any networking could ever get, is just by showing genuine curiosity in what the people around you are interested in.
The key word there is genuine interest. And I think that's something, I mean, maybe you have a different perspective. I don't know if that's a learned skill or if that's just like an innate characteristic, but having a genuine interest in other people is going to set you up for such long-term success because like you said, and it's one of those things, it's kind of selfish because it amps me up to get people amped up. So like when I hit someone's like passion point and like I hit that topic where all of a sudden their face lights up, my face lights up just from their face lighting up. And so I love hearing about people's, whether it's a project they're working on or like a hobby of theirs or an experience they had where you just see that switch, like those little micro expressions start to bubble up and it's like, oh, game time, here we go. Like that is I love those instances. But that'd be something I'd be curious. Do you think that like genuine curiosity and interest in others' passions is like a learned skill?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think that would go kind of hand in hand with EQ. And so, for anyone who doesn't know, EQ is emotional intelligence. So, everyone has an IQ, like how quote unquote smart you are. I don't know what my IQ is. I like to think I'm kind of intelligent. Who knows? I also 24 and I still do math on my fingers. So, like, really don't know. But I know that my EQ is very high because I can read people well. I can tell their emotions and I am just a very good people person. So I think having a strong or high EQ balances out or kind of is parallel to having a genuine interest in others and being able to pick up that that is their passion and be able to ask the right questions and just pick out a little thing from the conversation and be like, wait, tell me more about that. So I think that to some people it does come more natural, but just as I believe you're not born smart, like you can further your intelligence, you can become quote unquote smarter, you can also raise your EQ. And I think that there are things that you can do, books that you can read, skills and just practices that will help you have more of a genuine interest in others and learn how to ask the right questions. But for some people, it does come more naturally. So I would say a little bit of both to answer your question.
Yeah, agreed. There is a really good book on it. An author, John C. Maxwell, wrote a book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. For anyone
Mm.
who is trying to better their skill of being interested, that's a really good book to read. So yeah, I was curious your take on that, but yeah, I'm gonna dive into that a little more. So I do a final two on my podcast. So final two questions. But before I do that, for people who are interested in maybe studying abroad or traveling or, shooting their shot, where can people connect with you to ask questions?
I am Shar from Chicago on every form of social media because pretty much everyone knows me as Charlotte from Chicago. Part of that is my little bit of an accent when I say Chicago. People are like, "Oh, Chicago?" I'm like, "Yes, thank you." I say it with a K, I get it. But I am Shar from Chicago, CHAR on every social media. I also have a website, sharfromchicago.com, and my podcast is We, Us, and Ours. So that's on every platform you can find a podcast as well.
All right, go check it out. It's time for the final two. So the first question of the final two, what for you right now is the next step in you becoming your best self?
Ooh, you are coming to me at a very pivotal point in my life, I would say, because I'm someone who's really big on chapters in life, and sometimes chapters close very quickly. Sometimes chapters, it takes a few pages for you to realize that a chapter closed. So I'm to a point in my life where a chapter's slowly closing and a new one's about to start. So I'm looking to move to DC in the next few months, and I'm working on launching my own travel consulting business. So, as we've talked about travel, I want to be able to use my skills and be able to help people travel in a way that works with their budget and their lifestyle. So for me, taking that next step, landing the plane and saying, okay, I don't have everything figured out, but I'm going to go to this new city and go launch this business. Like, yeah, I could fail, but what if I don't? What if I thrive? And what if I never take that shot? So for me, the best version of myself is going to be taking that plunge, moving to a new city and just saying, I'm going to make it work. I don't know how I'm going to make it work, but I will.
That's awesome. I will gladly hit you up for some travel plans because I've got some things coming down the pipeline where I'm like, that's a lot of planning on my part. So maybe
Yes.
I'll have
I'm
to reach out to you.
Oh, please. I love it.
Perfect. All right. And then the final question. This is probably my favorite part because I get to learn something very directly from you, as does the audience. So you get to challenge the audience here to do one thing that, when done, will teach them a lesson or better their life in some way, or just like teach them something about themselves. What's one thing you would challenge the audience to do?
Okay. This is going to go somewhat back to our conversation of shooting your shot and going kind of full send, but everyone has that feeling that when you think, oh, I'd love to talk to that person, or what about this? You get that split second thought, and then your subconscious is like, that's crazy. I could never do that. And then you go off and do your own thing. I challenge you that the next time that you get that thought that you're like, oh, that girl's really cute. Maybe I should go say hi. Oh, yeah, no, never could do that. And you just brush it off. Don't. The next thought, no matter what it is, the next time that you get that like gut feeling of, what if I did that? And before your mind tricks you and says, you could never, go do it. I don't care what it is. Go do it. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. You might airball. You might have a buzzer beater game winning shot. You never know, but you just got to do it.
I love it. Okay, this is actually kind of weird that this has come up multiple times now. So, do you know who Mel Robbins is? She
I think so, maybe.
so she's an author, public speaker, kind of influencer, I guess I would say. She wrote a book called The 5 Second Rule, where she talks about exactly what you're talking about, where you know there's something that you should do, or that like it's that like, oh, I really want to do that thing, but it would get you out of your comfort zone, so your brain immediately goes on alert. And then she says you've got a fast 5 seconds, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to act on it before your brain stops you. So I'm going to have to go back and read that book again or something, because that's come up like way more times than it has in the past 2 years and like the past 3 days.
Hey,
But I
see, those are
absolutely
those
love
little
that.
signs that the universe puts out that you're like, okay, well, what am I supposed to be learning from this? What is this chapter supposed to be teaching me?
Well, you're definitely a messenger for something for me. So I will do that. I think I do a fairly good job of that, but I'll amp it up a little extra today. Um, Also, anyone who hasn't read the 5 second rule, I highly recommend it for that exact reason. If you get caught hesitating, or you always kind of play that internal back and forth with like whether or not you should, take that action or start that new thing, that book is amazing for getting over that hesitation. So thank you for that. That was a great challenge for me in particular, just because of that. That's so weird. Like the synchronicity of that's crazy. But I want to thank you, Charlotte, for meeting with me, talking. This was awesome. I think your story is incredible. It's inspiring. I know you were talking about like you really want to dive deep into public speaking. I think you're going to inspire a lot of people with that. But I really want to thank you for making it. Like what I mean by that is I keep going back to this, like with your past, your story, you've had multiple make it or break it moments. And I just want to acknowledge you for just having the tenacity to keep chasing your goals so shamelessly and so unapologetically, and just staying so authentically true to what you feel your calling is, and going after it with everything you've got. I think everyone can take a few notes out of your book.
Oh, you're gonna get me choked up. You're so sweet. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. For everybody listening, definitely go check out her podcast. It is We, Us, and Ours. Definitely reach out to her if you have questions about travel, if you have questions about, shooting your shot, if you have questions, maybe you've had some adversity that you've had to overcome and now it's holding you back. Reach out to her. If she's anything like me, and I know she is, she's more than happy to talk with you, give you some tips. If you have questions or comments, leave them in the comments section. If there's someone you know who would really get something profound out of this talk, share it with them. That's why those buttons are there for you to use. And as always, thank you everybody for being on this journey with me. Every person I sit down with is an opportunity for me to learn, and I really respect anyone who jumps on and joins me in that pursuit. So thank you, and we will talk to you next time.